Welcome. On the 30th of June 2010, Benigno Aquino III, also known as Noynoy Aquino, was sworn in as the 15th president by the Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the Philippines, Conchito Carpio Morales. His presidential term ended on the 30th of June 2016. In today's news, we will be reporting the economic agenda of the former President Noynoy Aquino. Now, Linus Cruz will be reporting on the Disbursement Acceleration Program.
The Disbursement Acceleration Program is intended to function as additional funding for projects. The funds from DAP come from two sections, savings and unprogrammed funds. Savings are those in which are the leftover portions under the General Appropriation Acts. These funds are basically surplus that come from expenses that do not need to be paid, while the unprogrammed funds come from loans or revenues that have no programs to be used for. These extra funds are intended for the use of executing new projects. This is a good example of fiscal policy, for it shows the adjustment of government expenditures and how it can shape the economy. The addition of funds causes more projects to be established, and when there are more projects, you will need workers to execute the project. And when they get paid, they have the capacity to spend. The cycle goes on, but it shows how the economy functions when there are more funds.
Truth Commission of 2010. The creation of this program has freed the investigation of the alleged corruption that was done during the term of his predecessor, Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. This was the first thing that he focused on upon becoming the president. During his 2010 SONA, he mentioned that the main agenda of his program is to search for the truth on the alleged wrongdoing committed in the last 9 years. The controversial 329 million NBN ZTE deal, the 728 million, 16 million fertilizer funds scam, and the Hello Garcia scandal were the ones included for investigation. This program took effect and got signed on July 30, 2010. So another project of the Aquino administration was the Conditional Cash Transfer Program, also known as Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino Program or 4Ps. This program took effect in the year 2008. It gives conditional grants to poor households which are classified via National Household Targeting System. For a beneficiary to qualify, he or she must be able to send his or her children to school and have them go for medical checkups. For pregnant women, they should avail public health service while the parents are need to go to family development sessions. The World Bank praised the said program, saying that Conditional Cash Transfer Program is on track to meet the goals of keeping children healthy and in school. In partnership with the Commission on Higher Education, the Department of Labor and Employment, and the Philippine Association of State Universities and College, 4Ps has enrolled 36,003 entry beneficiaries in state universities and colleges as of June 2015. Additionally, in partnership with PhilHealth, 4Ps has covered 4.4 million beneficiaries under the National Health Insurance Program.
Cybercrime law can also be pertained as Republic Act number 10175. It is a law that gives justice to cybercrimes and at the same time provides the corresponding penalty and punishment on the illegal acts done online. Cybercrime law was signed on September 12, 2012, 11 years after the original version was filed in Congress. It took effect on October 3 the same year. Reproductive Health Bill can also be inferred as Republic Act number 10354 or the Responsible Parenthood and Reproductive Health Act of 2012. RH law gives an overall access to reproductive health services and information. This law provides the distribution of contraceptives and mandates sex education in public schools. RH law was highly contradicted by the Catholic Church due to its sensitive, censored, and controversial content. This law was signed after 13 years and 4 months in Congress in December 12.
The Bangsamoro Basic Law. The goal of this law is to promote peace between government and the rebel group Moro Islamic Liberation Front, and hopes to put an end to the 40 years of armed conflict in the southern Philippines. This law hopes to achieve the parliamentary form of autonomous region in Mindanao. The next agenda of Pinoy is the K-12 program, also known as the Enhanced Basic Education of 2013. The said program gives 2 additional years to the basic education system. The setup of the primary and secondary education will go this way. Kindergarten, 6 years of primary education, 4 years of junior high school, and 2 years of senior high school before heading into college. For the new setup of our basic education, the Department of Education assures that graduates will be prepared for employment in various industries.
On September 23, 2010, Aquino delivered his remarks at the MCC signing ceremony at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York City. A $434 million MCC compact agreement, with MCC meaning Millennium Challenge Corporation, will fund the Aquino administration's various programs on poverty reduction, revenue generation, and infrastructure development. Moreover, according to BSP data at the end of 2010, money stood at 4.48 trillion pesos, which represented a year-on-year increase of 10%. It grew by 7.1 and 9.4% in 2010 and 2012 respectively. While in 2013, the growth soared to 31.8% year-on-year, which is in part and not entirely due to the buildup of hot money from the US Fed's quantitative easing program, or the QE program. Due to BSP intervention, it had cooled down at the end of May 2014 and stood at 6.94 trillion pesos. This figure, however, still represented a 28.4% increase from the same month earlier that year. Ultimately, OFW remittances have grown from $20 billion in 2010 to almost $30 billion by 2015. BPO earnings have surged and are moving close to the same magnitude of OFW remittances. Both have strengthened the balance of payments that serve to sustain the growth of domestic consumption demand. Nearing the end of the Aquino administration, a law institutionalizing the Financial Inclusion Steering Committee, or the FISC, was signed by President Aquino. It is the governing body to implement the government's National Strategy for Financial Inclusion, or the NSFI. Under Executive Order Number 208, which was signed by Aquino on June 2, 2016, it provides strategic direction, guidance, and oversight on the NSFI and had been mandated on the FISC. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, or the BSP, said the NSFI serves as a guidepost to systematically accelerating financial inclusion in the Philippines for public and private sector stakeholders. The NSFI defines the national vision for financial inclusion and provides a platform for public and private sector coordination to ensure synergy of efforts and defines the national goal or vision for financial inclusion. Meanwhile, the FISC is basically tasked to monitor the progress of these policies and programs and align various financial inclusion. Lastly, it is to collaborate with public and private sector stakeholders on various agenda. In the end, the central bank entirely kept the banking system at an above state of capital ampleness and conformity with sound standards of banking. Thus, the entire system of banking has been kept in a solid position, equipped for withstanding any potential pressures financially.
President Aquino was able to provide an environment conducive to nurturing the economy by boosting revenue collection by 1.6% of GDP simply by improving systems. His main contribution to the economy was setting up the proper foundations and getting the macroeconomic fundamentals and national budget in order. The only tax that was raised was excise tax by 0.4%, and the budget side is now much more transparent and participatory. Adding that the Aquino administration was able to keep inflation in check and steady throughout his administration. It can also be said that the foreign reserves are a strong point. Since 2008, the country's reserves have been able to cover 10 months' worth of expenses, aided by the stream of remittances from overseas Filipino workers. OFW remittances have reached the highest under Aquino. The OFW remittances have grown from $20 billion in 2010 to almost $30 billion by 2015. The success of BPO service exports has made the country into a leading provider of this service to the international economy. When it came to the macro fundamentals, the fiscal, monetary, and trade cooperated to produce a stable environment. They harnessed the current payments surpluses close to 5% of GDP by holding inflation to a level within the target range of 3 to 5% per annum.
Improvements of the economy during Pinoy's administration.
There are a lot of improvements during the administration of Pinoy, although some of those improvements were not really publicized. One of the things that the Aquino administration really did was they improved a lot of infrastructures outside Metro Manila, because one of his programs was inclusive growth, and one of the targets, what he wanted to do was to also develop provinces around the Philippines, since here in Manila, we have so much infrastructure already. What he wanted to do was he reached out to provinces, improved a lot of roads, especially from farm to market, and there were a lot of provincial bridges that he actually improved on.
What would you say is the strengths of his economic agenda?
Well, I think the strengths of his economic agenda was he was able to bring in a lot of foreign investors because of the confidence of the foreigners, especially foreign investors in his administration. Although we do know that there have been a lot of criticisms and there have been a lot of issues during his administration, but because of both confidence coming from the local and of course from the foreign community, a lot have already invested in the Philippines. There were a lot of improvements, a lot of infrastructures, and that has also paved the way for us, improving our credit. We have improved our credit rating, the Moody's credit rating, and then I think there was a time wherein we were able to give money, I think, to one of the countries that were devastated. I think it was, I'm not mistaken, I can't really remember what country was hit by a huge disaster, but the Philippines under President Aquino actually gave money as financial support to the country, whereas it has been the case wherein Philippines would always receive financial assistance.
What is the greatest weakness of his economic agenda?
I think the greatest weakness of his economic agenda was still on looking into more on inclusive growth. Of course, you have the growth in provinces, you have the improvement in infrastructure, but a lot of the improvements came from, let's say, from people or from families who are rich, I guess. I think the problem with his economic agenda was it brought a lot of investors, but it's the capitalists who really benefit from the foreign investors. And when it came to his inclusive growth agenda, there was still the increasing gap between the rich and the poor. And of course, during his time, one of the criticisms was that the salary of a CEO has jumped leaps and bounds compared to the normal employees. And aside from that, I think his problem also was during his economic agenda. With his economic agenda was the challenges posed by corruption, because it seems that even during his time, he has been assigning people he knew. So if you do know, during the time of the MRT crisis, when Secretary or then Secretary Abaya was assigned, we do know what happened to the MRT. There were a lot of mishaps, there were a lot of problems, and it wasn't quite handled. It wasn't quite handled well.
What is the program that was most beneficial for the Philippines?
Well, I think the program that was most beneficial during his time was the expansion of PPPs, or the public-private partnerships. Because actually the concept of PPPs is that the government would use the resources, they would partner with private firms, since we do know that private firms are more efficient compared to public or compared to government firms. So he also promoted a lot of PPPs because he knew that to be able to meet the challenges in improving infrastructure, we still have to use the best efficient or allocate and use the best resources, which is actually resources that are owned and managed by private firms. So actually, a lot of the expansion in infrastructure were actually PPPs. So you have, let's say, even the Skyway, well, it was credit grabbed by the current DPWH, Secretary Villar, but it was actually during Pinoy's time that they had to work on expanding the Skyway to connect the north and the south. And then in my area, we have the connecting exit from the South Superhighway or SLEX going to Cavite. So there were a lot of infrastructures that were mainly based on PPPs.
What can Duterte learn from Pinoy's administration?
I think we do know, or obviously what Duterte said was he will still continue the economic agenda of Pinoy. Yeah. So it means that there must be something good within Pinoy's economic agenda that Duterte wants to not really imitate but wants to continue. And I guess one of the economic agendas that Duterte has to really look into is the controlling the inflation rate, because the problem that we have right now is that our inflation rate is continuously going high. Well, maybe because a lot of people are not employed, because it could be that prices go up because people are employed, people have more money right now. But of course, the problem also that the Duterte administration has to look into is also to look into possible ways to improve trade. Because even during the time of Pinoy, he wasn't that keen on expanding the international market in the Philippines. So we are still mostly into importing rather than exporting. But of course, during his time, because of the expansion of infrastructure, expansion of other firms, we were able to increase our exports, but just not big enough. But of course, the problem right now is the confidence of foreign investors is at an all-time low because of a lot of political pressure and a lot of the political situation that we have been happening. So if Duterte wants to be able to sustain the growth of the Philippines, he has to look into not only into the drug war, but also to look into other aspects as well, such as of course, we do know that he has the build project. But the problem with the build project is that Duterte actually wants PPPs to be abolished. So all resources will be coming from the government, which will be very expensive for us because it means that our taxes has to be raised. So that is why they are using the train. Of course, we do know that in the train or the tax reform, there will be a decrease in income tax for the lower brackets, but there will be an increase in the higher brackets. But we do know that people in the higher brackets are rich enough to buy whatever goods that they want. But there is the danger that they will be increasing excise taxes, the value-added tax, and even removing the exemption of VAT on PWDs and senior citizens just to offset the potential decrease in taxes. So I think they really have to look into that, because if we increase the excise taxes and especially value-added tax, everyone buys. Let's say, simply if you go to McDo, we see that receipt with that value-added tax. It's already 12%. They want to increase it to 15%. Of course, it's just not the rich that buy from McDo or Jollibee. It's also people that are at the lower brackets. So it could also increase the prices of goods. I think from one of my conversations is that, or one of the conversations I had with a team member who drafted also the train or the tax reform, is that there will only be a slight increase in there will only be a slight increase in inflation. So I asked the person how much. So it's 0.9 percentage points. It seems low, but remember that the current inflation of the Philippines is 3.3. And if you add it, let's say 3.3 plus 0.9, that would be 4.2. And then the target, the inflation target of the central bank is just between 2 to 4%. So the current administration really has to polish a lot. There are some policies that during the Aquino administration that were also questionable. And I understand that they had to eradicate some. But the policies in place of those policies that were removed are also questionable. So I think that's my piece.
Thank you, sir.